a round of applause, and I'm going to be quiet.
You know, it's funny, just walking over here by the Cost Plus store, you see this big sign, China. And it's very appropriate for the topic, why China owns the U.S. And I'm reminded of Hung Chau, who's a Chinese person who works for an American boss in Los Angeles. And his story, he calls the boss one day very sick and says, "Boss, I cannot work. I have a headache, I have tummy ache, I have leg ache, cannot come to work." You know, the American boss says, no, I need you today desperately. He says, you know, when I feel the way you do sick, I just go to my wife, tell her I need sex. We have sex, I feel better, I have no problem, I come to work, you should try it out. 2 hours later, Hung Chau calls, he goes, "Oh, boss, I feel a lot better. I take your advice. I do what you say. I be there in 2 hours. And by the way, you have a nice house." And part of the miscommunication between American politicians and Chinese politicians has created the perception that China is the vicious, bad, ugly, communist, human rights abuser. But let's look at some of the history and what I point out in this book, the reason this misperception, mistranslation exists is because of what I point out repeatedly is the failure of the American education system. And the system has failed so bad that Americans know less about their own American history and constitutional history because they do not study it. Most Americans graduating high school, never mind not knowing history, are functional illiterates. They cannot complete a job application. Chinese in, never mind Hong Kong where I live, but mainland China know more about American history than American high school graduates. But you know what? They all speak English a lot better than Americans speak Chinese, any dialect of Chinese. That is the fundamental basic difference and ignorance about why the misperception, culturally and otherwise, of the way Chinese do things. You know, being someone who lives in Hong Kong and experiencing the sponge of knowledge there, be it American or otherwise, and the anger that Chinese have at Americans, going back to when Mao and the Americans defeated the Japanese. Mao Zedong wants to establish diplomatic relations with America. What does America say after they beat the Japanese? No, you're a commie, we don't want to deal with you. No different, by the way, than what happened with Ho Chi Minh and Vietnam. He was working for the forerunner of the CIA, fought alongside the Americans to defeat the Japanese, then went on to defeat the French. Hey, America, we're buddies, I worked for you. Forget it, you're a commie. So there is this fundamental miscommunication and misunderstanding that the Chinese, being Chinese, have been very upset, very offended, but culturally will do like Hung Chau did in the opening joke. I said, "This is what you want me to do? That's fine. A typical exam in the U.S. high school of, which is a very sad commentary on the U.S. education system. Question, name the 4 seasons: salt, pepper, mustard, and vinegar. And I can go on. What happens to your body as you age? When you get old, so do your bowels and you get intercontinental. Question, what happens to a boy when he reaches puberty? And I'm skipping questions here. He says goodbye to his boyhood and looks forward to his adultery. What is a turbine? Something an Arab wears on his head. What is a Hindu? It lays eggs. Okay? These are high school tests in America. One of the quotes I have in the opening chapter of the book, which I have a quote in every opening chapter, is on the education chapter, is war is God's way of teaching Americans geography. Ambrose Bierce. There's only one problem. American kids to this day have no idea where Iraq is on the map after America's been at a war in Iraq for 5 years. Vietnam, when American high school kids are asked, where's Vietnam? It's part of Hong Kong, it's part of China. New Mexico is part of Mexico. And the classic is the late night talk shows where you've got a Jay Leno asking college graduates, who's George Washington? A bridge in New York. American history is not taught. American history is, I can talk to Chinese students in China or Hong Kong that know more about American history than American high school graduates or college graduates because of the dumbing down of the system here. Is there any wonder that America is in the mess it's in?